is not all Black. I mean, I have a total of 13 students, and 3 are Spanish and 2 are white. But just to basically have more diversity, and not only in the classroom, but as it pertains to students, but also to teachers and even our board members. So something that I spoke to my husband, Michael, about is basically the people that we know, that one that we went to church with, and one is a next door neighbor, one is a teacher, and one is an assistant superintendent in another county away from us. But we reached out to them knowingly that we do want some teachers or someone on the board to be white. And honestly, what I think about when I do it is just the diversity, because when I first came to Montessori, that's what I saw, that's what I fell in love with, that's what I want, that is what I'm going after. And I believe that it's great for our children to have that kind of integration, that kind of diversity. It works very well. So I just wanted to share that not only teachers, but, you know, again, if you have a school that's all of one, then we, you know, I think if we're going to, you know, expose our children, it's great to have a well diverse balance in the classroom.
I applaud your recognition of that, because so often is it a given that if you have an all-white classroom and there are a sprinkling of African-American or Latinx children in your classroom, that's just assumed, that's just the way it is, and that there is no question about continuing to intentionally bring more diversity to your classroom. And so I applaud your work to do that, and attempting to access people, to provide access where people are, to bring them in. I think that's wonderful and should be looked at across the board.
Thanks. And then we have Helen.
I just wanted to say that I think it's, you know, it's just important that we have the right intention in our hearts, and that we, you know, are just thoughtful and open and mindful about how we approach people. And as long as we're honest, then they're going to see that. And then it's up to the person to decide whether or not we're being sincere, or if they're, you know, maybe feeling like they're the, you know, the one Asian person or the one, you know, African-American person that's trying to get pulled in. But it's no, you know, it's no secret what's happening across the country. And I'm really excited that there's, you know, this nationwide change. That's all.
Yeah, and I'm hoping that we can give each other a little bit more, more knowledge and more grace as we're traveling this road, because we definitely need that. Kathy, anything in the chat before we?
Oh, there's a few things in the chat here. So Karen Kelly says, so grateful to be here and reading Kendi's book, helpful in understanding racism and anti-racism. Claudia, let's see if I get this right, Langlo, and Claudia, you can help me with that. I have been listening to the audio White Fragility, and there has been a lot that has been brought to my attention. What systemic racism is, I really didn't understand. Eileen says, had a wonderful conversation this week with a Black colleague, both of us retired, about racism, which encouraged me to organize a conversation with many of our community professionals. And Tina Schneider shares, I am feeling that we as a school community are just beginning this important conversation and want to use the knowledge and experience of others to inform our discussions. We also have a very diverse school with a very non-diverse staff and need to be open to learning new ways to interact with the whole community.
Mm-hmm. And also perhaps to diversify the staff as well, to look to those opportunities.
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to share a clip. Sarah, are you ready with that? I think it is time for us to hear from children.
Segregation is when black and white are separate and not together.
Children of color and white children are separated.
There are two different schools, and one is for black people and another one is for white people.
Segregation happens, but it's not like happening as bad as it did before, because before it used to be even worse.
In my class, there's Julia, and she's white, and there's me.
Well, my cousin named Lana, she used to go to a Catholic school. Well, she felt awkward because she was the only black person.
The only other people from the Middle East in the school is my cousins.
Because some people might decide to fit in with the people of the opposite race, but some people might not feel comfortable around people that isn't part of their race.
I've been to a school named PS85, so there were separate classes, English and Spanish, so it wasn't really fair because before I didn't know any English. I only speak Spanish.
I have a sister. She goes to a Catholic school, and her name is Hennessy, and it's like a school for rich people, and she had an opportunity to go, but you don't really see a lot of colored people, but there still is, but there's more white people that you see in the school.
One main reason I think that is because of the money too. Private schools tend to be more expensive. I think that schools are segregated based on where you live, because people of color live with people of color and white people live with other white people.
My mom was looking at a school for me to go to, and the population for whites was really large, and the blacks were really small. I think one of the reasons they did that was because, number one, they still think whites are better, and number two, because segregation is illegal and they still feel like whites are better, they want mainly white people, but having one or two black people and a couple Latino, it makes them seem like not totally white.
I thought that was quite amazingly right out of the mouth of children, isn't it?
Yep.
And when you hold on to the information in that clip, I want to remind you of what we took a moment of silence over around schools and teachers and desegregation of teachers. And I want us to hold the fact that if we have Montessori schools that only have one race, then we have a segregated school. And that our work is to change that up. And we need to own it and call it what it is, because it is. And to ask ourselves, what can we do to change those dynamics? What is it that keeps children of color out of Montessori schools? Or what is the access that parents don't have so that children of color are not in Montessori schools? I think that's a piece for us to be able to hold on to. So I want us to do a little exercise. And Sarah's going to help me make sure that I say this correctly, because it's not designed for technology, but I'm going to attempt to do it technologically. So if you don't have your camera on, I'm hoping that you're willing to have your camera on for this exercise. And if you aren't, you aren't, but a part of it has to do with that. So I'm hoping that you will have your camera on, and I'm going to ask you some questions that just have to do with exposure to situations that have to do with racism, speaking out about situations, being a witness to situations, not being able to speak up, being fearful to speak up, having something that happened to you or someone else. And I'm going to ask you to either turn your camera on or off, depending on what it is that is your response. So just to make sure we've all got it down, can everyone turn their camera off? Fred and Kathleen, can you turn your camera off?
Would be in the lower left of your corner usually.
Two of them. Where the Zoom looks.
Little camera icon.
And Karen, can you turn your camera off?
This is a camera.
This is?
Yep. Click on the option.
Ooh, Kathleen, you did it?
Did it? Okay.
Little icon.
You did. Karen and Fred, can you turn your cameras off?
Thank you, honey.
If you can't, you could just grab a piece of paper, fold it, and set it over your camera lens so that it blocks your, yes.
Sure.
That's a low-tech option.
Yeah, that'll work too.
Oh.
So Daniel, if you just got on, we're doing an exercise, and the first thing is that we're just asking everybody to turn off their camera so that we can make sure that you can. So Karen, if you can't turn it off, then as Sarah mentioned, put a piece of paper over. That's going to be yes. That's going to be you turning off your cameras. Okay, turn your cameras back on.
Oh.
See, now that I've asked you to do all of that. Erin, Jana, Kathleen, can you turn your cameras back on?
I'm trying.
There we go. Okay.
Oh. Yeah, okay.
Okay, question is, in the last week, I want you to hear the statement first. In the last week, I have seen an advertisement with someone of the same race as me. If you have, leave your camera on. If you have not, turn your camera off.
And you know how to turn it back on.
Yeah, just click it.
Okay, now turn your cameras back on. The statement is, my boss is a different race than me. If your boss is a different race than you, turn your camera off. If your boss is the same race as you, leave your camera on. Okay, turn your cameras back on. The statement is, there are many times that I am the only person of a different race in the room. If that is true, leave your camera on. If there are many times when you are the only person of a different race in the room, leave your camera on. Okay, turn your cameras back on. You've gone into a store and someone you felt was watching or following you. If that is the case, leave your camera on.
So if you have not been watched or followed, turn it off, right?
Correct. Okay, turn your cameras back on. Someone has used a demeaning term or expression around you that was directed at your race. If that is the case, keep your camera on. If it is not, turn it off.
Ever? Is the question ever that they've ever done that, or just recently?
Ever.
Ever.
Okay, turn your cameras back on. An acquaintance used a demeaning term or expression directly at you, but connected to your race. If that has happened to you, leave your camera on. If it has not, turn your camera off. Turn your cameras back on. You were congratulated or shown appreciation for something that was not out of the ordinary, as though it was something surprising for someone of your race. For example, I'm going to introduce Cindy. She's very articulate. If that has happened to you, leave your camera on. Otherwise, turn your camera off. Turn your cameras back on. Your race has been brought up in a conversation having absolutely nothing to do with race. If that has happened to you, leave your camera on.
Repeat the question, please.
Yes, your race has been brought up in a conversation having absolutely nothing to do with race. If that has happened to you, leave your camera on. Otherwise, turn your camera off. Turn your cameras back on.
Cindy, could you clarify what that last statement really meant?
Yeah, I can. It's having a conversation in which you are, talking about motorcycles in a race car, and someone has said, I've never known a black race car driver before.
Thanks.
As a child in school, someone made fun of you because of the color of your skin. If that has happened to you, leave your camera on. If it has not, turn your camera off. Turn your cameras back on. You have seen a TV show depicting a racial stereotype of your race. If that is true, leave your camera on. If not, turn your cameras off. Okay, turn your cameras back on. Most skin products that you see in stores reflect people of another race than your own. If that is true, leave your camera on. If not, turn your camera off. Turn your cameras back on. Most teachers that you had in school were of a race other than yours. If that is true, leave your camera on. If it is not, turn your camera off. Turn your cameras back on. You heard someone make a racial joke, but you were too afraid to speak up. If that is true, leave your cameras on. If not, turn your cameras off.
So if we spoke up, we turn it off, right?
That's correct.
That could be helpful. I'm sorry, can you repeat that whole question?
I sure can. You heard someone make a racial joke, but you were too afraid to speak up. If you were too afraid to speak up, leave your camera on. If you spoke up, turn your camera off. Turn your cameras back on. You walk down a street concerned about how people view you because of your race. If that is true, leave your camera on. If it is not, turn your camera off.
Can you say that one more time?
Yes,
Please?
you walk down the street concerned about how people view you because of your race. If that is true, leave your camera on. If it is not, turn your camera off. You have 4 more. Cameras back on. You know that a student may have been treated differently because of their race, but you felt too uncomfortable to speak up. If that is true, leave your camera on. If not, turn your camera off. Turn your cameras back on. You know that a teacher may have been treated differently because of their race, but you felt too uncomfortable to speak up. If that is true, leave your camera on. If it is not true, turn your camera off. Turn your cameras back on. You have experienced nuances of people being treated differently in Montessori spaces, but have felt too uncomfortable to speak up. If that is true, leave your camera on. If that is not true, turn your camera off.
Please repeat the question.
Absolutely. You have experienced nuances of people being treated differently in Montessori spaces, but you have not felt comfortable to speak up. If that is true, leave your camera on. If that is not true, turn your camera off. Turn your cameras back on. Oh, turn your cameras back on. You are aware that racism must exist in Montessori spaces as it does in the rest of the world. If that is true, leave your cameras on. If that is not true, turn your cameras off.
I'm sorry, Cindy, do you mean that it has to exist or that it does exist?
That it does exist.
Okay.
And turn your cameras back on. You are committed to anti-racism. If that is true, turn your cameras off and then back on. What did that exercise do for you? What came up? I think Helen has her hand up.
A lot of memories. And I had a hard time being part of the group last time, and just that, and I thought, okay, I can get through this, okay. But it brings up a lot of stuff that, I thought I was okay with, as I'm getting older, but it's pretty painful memories.
Helen, are you comfortable with sharing any of them?
Oh, sure. What age group? What time span of my life do you want to hear about?
How about childhood?
So I grew up in a primarily white New England community. It still is mostly white. I know there's, you know, KKK members in this town. And there was a couple other Asian children, but they, you know, we kind of compared notes and they didn't have as much trouble as I did growing up. You know, the thing about racism is that if something happens and you don't, you know, there's some kind of dispute, minorities get attacked for what they look like. You know, white children, because white people are the majority, you know, there aren't those racial epithets for them. They're jerks or they're, you know, bullies. But, you know, when you're a minority, you end up being called the N-bomb, or, you know, I was called a chink, told repeatedly to go back to my own country, but I was born in Germany because my dad was in the army. Then they started calling me a Nazi just because I was born in Germany. You know, it was very confusing. And this was every single day from first grade until 5th grade. They stopped in 6th grade because I was beating the crap out of everybody and getting in trouble for that. And my teachers did nothing. You know, they would tell me, don't be so sensitive. You know, you are making a big deal out of nothing. I had written in the last week's meeting that the day the only African-American student came to school, the only thing I could think of was, thank God I can catch a break now.
Hello.
And I'm appalled at thinking that
Hello?
now, but it was like, okay, you know, I can get a breather here. You know, and my father, who was white, he, you know, he never could understand, you know, what the problem was. And it was my mother, God bless her heart, who told me, go kick him in the shins, you know, don't put up with that. So then I'd beat people up and, you know, get in a lot of trouble, but the teachers did nothing. You know, but I've been told, you know, my parents never should have been, so this is when I'm an adult. I was told my parents should have stuck with their own people. My mother never should have come to this country. You know, they'd say, oh, I respect your father because he was white, but he never should have, you know, married your mother and you never should have been born. You know, you speak really good English. I just, whatever there is to say, you know, to somebody, even in the nicest, you know, they might be meaning well, but it's still terrible. I have my friend's husband. Whenever I see him, he jokes about, you know, have you eaten any dog meat lately? And it's like, I just tell him, you're not funny. That's really offensive. And, you know, he just laughs and laughs and thinks it's a riot. But, you know, it's just wrong. But he's a big white guy. And, you know, unless they actually have, you know, some kind of a similar experience, they're not really going to understand. My husband didn't understand until, you know, he met me. People were asking him, what's it like dating Helen? What do you mean? Well, she's Asian, you know, she's Oriental. You know, it's like, well, she's just a regular person. There's no difference, you know. It's not like I've, you know, I don't know. It's just bizarre. It's just really, really strange. But,
yeah,
you know, and I always tell myself, you know, people can't mess with middle-aged minority women because we've seen it all. But, you know, then I go through this and it's like, oh God, it's still right here. You know, it's like all those feelings. And
yeah.
And I like to tell Cheryl, you know, what I had written about, you know, the races, white race, black race, you know, I'm not in any way trying to say that there isn't disparity. You know, I am absolutely thrilled we're having all these protests because this is such a long time coming. It's just, I've always personally been confused, about, what race means. It's like, because they talk about the white race and they talk about the black race, and, but you never hear about red race or yellow race or Middle Eastern race. And truly, to me, it is about the human race. We're all people. We all bleed the same. We all, have the capacity for the same emotions, and we do have different experiences and different skin colors. And I think it's terrible that, there is all the wage disparity, and just, I'm just excited that change is happening. So if I said anything that offended you, I'm really sorry, but that I am genuinely confused about it. To me, it's one human race, and we should respect and celebrate everybody's differences. That's all.
Thank you for sharing, Helen, and I hope you feel like this is a safe place for you to hold your experiences, because that's what it's about.
Oh, no, definitely. I'm very grateful to all, to everyone for having this forum and for, just listening to everybody.
Kathy, I saw hands. Did you? I saw Michael's hand up.
I don't see electronic hands, but go ahead and
Anne.
Michael.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you, Helen, for sharing. So like in 2007, when the market tanked, I was working for a company called WebMD. If you're a serial neurotic, you might be familiar with that website. But so I was at WebMD, and I was an analyst there for some years, and then the market tanked, and so they did a 4% across the board cut, and they let me go. That happens, last in, first out. So, I was looking for a job for quite some time, and then it was very tough. I couldn't find a job, although, I had qualifications. It was across the board difficult for me to find something in my bracket where, in the same pay scale that I was at. So I kind of held out for a while, couldn't find anything. So I said, man, it's time to just get into a company, do what you can. So I started working for a large relocation corporation. And just as a side fact to my point, I came in at the absolute base. I believe it was like $13.50 an hour, something like that. The manager said $15.30. I was so glad to have a job that I worked for about a year without realizing that they were paying me $13.50. So I'm not blaming anyone, but when I said to him, listen, I have on paper $15.30. I'm sorry, no, it wasn't on paper. We agreed to $15.30, but you've wound up paying me $13.50. And he said, man, there's nothing I can do about that. I really apologize. It's been a year now. We'll make the correction immediately, not retroactively. I said, fine, no problem. I know my worth. I will work. Now, that has nothing to do with anything. I was just mentioning that. So I worked very, very hard. And within a year, the people that were training me, I became their manager. And one of my colleagues who I wound up managing, good friend of mine, I love this guy. He's really cool. He's of Jewish descent, but he's white. His father is from Manchester. And I was born in Leicestershire, which is kind of south of Manchester. And I remember one time he said to me, well, we were great friends, but he couldn't wrap his head around me being his manager. So he actually asked my manager for me to not manage him. And I could not understand why. I rose in the ranks. They saw the value. I'm not boasting. I worked hard. I'd never been in the low pay bracket, didn't intend on staying there. Worked, became this man's manager. He was a high dollar, big money maker. I still love him, respect him. But interestingly enough, as things got better and my, the money flowed and panned out, I bought myself a new car. I bought it wasn't even a good car. It was just a new car. It was I bought whatever the year was, 2010 at that point, I bought a Charger. He was driving an older Acura, and he saw me in the parking lot, and he came up to me. He said, "Whoa!" I said, "Well, yeah." He said, "It's a nice car." I said, "Yeah, it is. I actually like it." He said, "Man, I should have that car." He said that, like he actually said, "I should have that car." And I was just blown away. Like, maybe because he's a high dollar guy, you know, he's a sales guy, so he made sky's the limit. I was on a salary, although it was, you know, reasonable. You want your sales guys to do better than you, obviously. I should have that car, he said. This guy, we continue, you know, just one of the things that I wrestle with. But anyway, time goes by, but I noticed that he used to have this ongoing joke in our sales meetings. You're not English. he couldn't even give me that. Like, you're not from England. Not that it even matters, you know, but he used to tell me that my accent is fake. I'm just faking this, you know, I can't be from England, you know? And I'm like, okay, well, whatever. It doesn't even matter if I am or not, but, you know, first I shouldn't have this car. Now I shouldn't be from England. You know, it was weird. And I'm not being passive here. I mean, I just telling you, these are the things, those are the kinds of, a couple of the things that I went through, you know? And as time has gone by, you know, he and I have become good friends, and then eventually I got kind of in his circle, and I realized that he identifies with the Jewish community, the Jewish plight, you know, of his historically, all the time he talks about it, and even racism that is levied against him. But he didn't see where he might have been committing a couple of sins of omission, you know, by some of the things he said. And as I got to know him, I just realized that he hadn't been around too many black people. He didn't have too many black friends. He didn't listen to any black pundits or media or music. And so, you know, he didn't have any experiences that would kind of lead him to understand, you know. And, you know, I'm thinking that one of the things that can help is if we put ourselves in these situations. If we, I don't know, it's crazy. I mean, your friends can be who they want to, but I just think it's important that we try to integrate, you know, be with your friends of your people of color time and time, see what it is that they do and what their interests are. And I think that will really, really help down the line. My wife bought me this book that I'm reading. There's an excerpt. If you don't mind, I just want to read real quick. It says, "The elementary classroom is not only a community of close friends, it is a source of countless life lessons in social skills, everyday courtesy, and ethics. Montessori noted that elementary children not only enjoy each other's company, they naturally form little social groups of friends, each its own internal hierarchy and rules of conduct." And I'm just saying, if the kids are not in situations where they can't experience that, then they can't develop those groups, those natural understandings. Just like my friend, the job there, he had no idea. He had no clue that he was just insulting the mess out of me, that I should not have that car, don't know why, and that I couldn't be from another country, and that I bought my passport in one day. I was so insecure because he kept saying it. So that being said, I think those experiences, like the child should experience, integration, it'll help us all to build natural ideas of who we are, where we stand, and possibly improve relations. So I just wanted to mention that at a time where people are constantly bringing up what's wrong, maybe this is something that we can do to help things go right.
Thank you, Michael.
Thank you.
Any other? I think Anne had her hand up prior to Michael. Go ahead.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, you're muted, Anne, so I just need to get you to unmute.
I'm speaking as the parent of a 55-year-old deaf child from the rubella epidemic. And he went to a wonderful Montessori school that was integrated back in the day, back in the 60s, which was almost unheard of. And then he went to, a regular nice private school because he had to read lips. His speech was not great. There wasn't a lot of help. And he has experienced all kinds of stuff that I was not aware of because I did not know. And I only much later in his life, he could say, Mom, X, Y, Z. And of course, I was thinking, well, you don't invade a teenager's space, instead of how did it go today and was anybody mean to you? So having him as my child has really helped me late in life understand a little bit about how hard it is to go through these experiences, and to have his lovely wife whose speech is maybe a little higher than it ought to be. Well, there's some people who are not comfortable with this difference and that his speech could be better. So a piece of me does get this late in life. And I just think the Black Lives Movement is bringing up so much stuff that's been laying under the rug for like 400 years. And I'm just glad that we're going to begin to deal with it. And thanks for letting me share this with the Montessori group, because actually you're my people. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Lisa has her hand up as well. Lisa, if you can unmute.
So Michael just tapped into one of my biggest struggles as a parent. My kids have gone, I have a Montessori school. I started it the year before my daughter was born. And it's in northern Baltimore County, and it's not a very, very diverse area. My dad was a minister, so growing up, we lived in Howard County outside DC, Montgomery County outside DC, moved to Baltimore County when I was in junior high. And my schools were always diverse, and my high school was 70% Black, and the majority of whites were Jewish. But that was I mean, that was just incredible for me. And one of my biggest struggles has been, even though we're in Baltimore County and we can do social diversity outside of school, has been that my kids didn't have that experience in school that I had, and that my experience in school shaped every bit of who I am. And as I get older, I realize how much and how foundational, especially high school was. And it has been a struggle with me. That is one of, there are plenty of parenting guilt, but usually they're situational. But as far as exposure and contributing to them as a human being, the lack of diversity is my biggest struggle, and has been my biggest struggle, and is the biggest burden I feel for them and as a parent. That's all.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Anyone else? Thank you. Thank you, Lisa.
Helen, do you have your hand up again?
If I could just say one more thing.
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure it wasn't up from before. So thanks. Go ahead.
So my husband went with me to Chicago to meet my Korean family for the first time, and we were in Koreatown. So his first experience of being the minority was being around all these short Koreans. He's 6'3", big, tall, white guy, big beard. They kept reaching up and grabbing his beard, and they were so happy and, friendly and loving towards him. And I thought, I was just so happy that he had, he could get it without having to go through a lot of pain, So we always joke about it. It's like he was the only white guy around for miles. It was really funny, but I was just happy for him.
Thank you, Helen. And Lisa, I just wanted to say to you that you got something that that many people don't quite get about the value now of children being in more diverse settings. That there is such a value, and that so shapes who you are and how you are in the world, and that children miss out on that. And we need to be able to do the work that we need to do in order to make those experiences richer, because otherwise you don't get to honor who you don't know and who you don't understand.
Cindy, we have inspired many hands to go up, so I'm going to kind of go through
Sure.
a few here, if that's okay with you. And let's see, I don't see a name here. Stephanie Pullman, you go, and I'm going to try to see some of the other names because there's a lot going up. So you go first, and then I'll get to everybody.
Cindy, thank you for that activity. For me, it was really sad. I felt sad through the whole thing. I kept seeing the same faces up and the same faces down. And that was just a very clear indication of my own privilege and not having to deal with all the things that you mentioned and had us think about. And then the other thing is that where I live, we have these huge high schools in my city. They're all very diverse, but the kids, it seems, self-segregate. And just like I think it was Lisa was saying, my own children have, their friends look just like them. And I feel like there's all this tracking that happens and all of these things that happen in these schools. Almost all the teachers are white, and that there's no help sort of to bring everybody together. No one knows how to do it or what to do. It's not really a question, or it's just like my observation.
And we're going to go there because we're going to talk about the classroom next week. So we're going to go there, and I'm just going to make a notation of that. But there are things that we can do. And we do it all the time when we want children to be separate because of behavioral kinds of difficulties, and so then we pair them with other children. We do it all the time. And we can learn to teach children how to build relationships. We can learn how to teach children to be inclusive if by nature we call that out of ourselves.
But it just seems like there's these other systems that are in place, like all this tracking. Like here, it's the GATE program, and it's the all this special learning programs, and all of these things that sort of segregate everybody. That like it feels like to even it's just so overwhelming in these schools that have 4,000 students. And I also question, like, do these teachers want to even do that? But I know we do as Montessorians.
Kathy, you had another hand.
So Cheryl Sims Gamble is next. Hi, Cheryl. Thanks for being here.
Thank you. I can't divorce myself of the experiences that I've had growing up in the United States with brown skin. And so I am usually pretty quick to address it when people seem to suggest color blindness as a solution. Because for me, to adopt an attitude of color blindness is to ignore how I have been forced to exist in the United States as a Black woman. So there's that. And Cindy, hearing what you just said about the topic for next week, this might be more appropriate there. I've been a Montessori educator for more than 20 years now, and I've been a mom for 6. And the choice that I have to make is give my children a Montessori education or give them a diverse education and a diverse group of friends. And that is a deep personal struggle. When it's time for re-enrollment, when it's time, as I'm looking at him, looking at the yearbook, looking at class pictures, and there's my caramel brown boy in a sea of vanilla. And I wonder, because I believe in Montessori. I also believe my brown child should be in a classroom with other brown children, and I have to do this. And I'm not the only parent who has to decide this, and not everybody can make the decision that I make. I teach at the school. He's actually going to be in my class. If anybody has advice for that, please let me know. As he's just finished Children's House and is coming to me in lower elementary in September. I am the only teacher of color in the school. And he will be, and he's biracial. His his other mother, and his genealogy is half white, half Black. And he will be the only child with any Black in my classroom of 20 or so. And I do have some Latinx children. I no longer have any Asian children. So the rest of my class is white. And yeah, it's been that way quite a bit. The school that I worked at before, somebody asked about whether or not it was better in public Montessori, was a public Montessori school, and there were two of us, 2 Black Montessori teachers in that school of 500 children. So I don't see that Montessori is doing any better than the world at large. In fact, I think it may be worse because we have these hefty tuitions. And until we figure out a way to not have these hefty tuitions, we are going to continue to exclude a large portion of the population that, due to, the transatlantic slave trade and 400 years of institutionalized racism, continue to not be able to afford $14,000, $20,000, $15,000 a year to send their child to school when their tax dollars are paying for a decent school, or maybe not even a decent school, but for a free opportunity down the street, up the block, or a mile away, 2 miles away, or what have you. And I know that I am, like I said, I consciously and painfully make the decision to send my children to school where I am and not there, but everybody hasn't made that same decision. The diversity of the classroom is more important to some people.
Yes.
Oh, Stephanie, sorry, I just saw Stephanie's comment. It certainly happened here. I teach in Springfield. There were 2 Montessori magnet schools in Springfield, and they still have the name. They aren't actually Montessori anymore. And one of them is the school to be at. If you work in the district, it is the school to be at. If you can work your way in because you know somebody downtown, it is almost as prestigious as a private school. And your regular, Keisha or Maria is not going to get her kid into that school unless she is connected to the right people downtown. And that's the one public Montessori that Springfield still has. So, sorry to go on a bit there.
There are a number of hands, Kathy, but I just want to say, I hope that everybody can hold the pain of what you just heard, to have to make the choice. Do I give my child a Montessori education, or do I give them a diverse experience? That shouldn't be the choice that one has to make. And that's painful. That's painful. Kathy, who's next?
Thank you. Arlette?
Sorry about that. I was thinking, and I was also going through the chat, and I saw someone's chat about what I was thinking and feeling, and I want to read it. And this is from Monica Johnson. She said, I moved my 7 Black children from a diverse community to a mainly white community intentionally. On the very first day in our new town, we walked into Walmart, and my 14-year-old daughter looked around and burst into tears. I regretted that at the time, I was unaware of her pain, and I didn't effectively address it. She is now 25 and is posting on social media about her resilience growing up Black with a white mom in a white community. I'm working today to be what she needs to support her journey and honor her intentionally. I really can talk about that in terms of my 2 kids who are in college right now. When my husband and I moved to Georgia, we moved to a neighborhood that was pretty much predominantly white. And our kids went to schools where they were the only Black, kid in class. I can't say, it's anyone's fault, but it's just a choice that we made. We love the area coming from New York and the houses. We just love the houses. So we moved, in the neighborhood as such. But the effect it had on my 2 children who are now in college, basically going through school, going to high school, and having to look at their friends and feel like, they really can't have true friendships because the kids around them, they just want to be friends with, their own kind or whatever. And so they had a very tough time. So now what I'm seeing that they're in college, I see that they couldn't be who they wanted to be and have the friends they wanted. So now their attention is taken up with trying to find themselves and trying to figure out, okay, I can have white friends now and I can be okay now. And so my son has a white girlfriend and my daughter, she's pursuing a white boyfriend, and that's just where they are. And so I don't know, but I'm still kind of reflecting and learning, like, what happened there. You know, was it bad for them to be in a school that was predominantly, you know, one kind and not mixed? So it's challenging, and I have my daughter right now, and you know, she's 14, and she's experiencing different things because of who she is. She's very artsy, so a lot of people know her, talk to her. She has different, you know, personality, and she's a bit of a child actress as well. She works. So she has a different experience, but my two in college, I feel like they are struggling so much trying to find themselves because they couldn't do it all the while. And so they told me, like my son said, you know what it was like growing up in Ola? Do you know what it's like being there and no one really cared about you because you were Black and you couldn't have friends and you couldn't this? So it was interesting, again, Monica, just reading your post and thinking about, you know, a lot of times as adults, we make decisions, we don't think about how it may impact our children. And they become adults, and then, you know, they're trying to figure this thing out.
Well, let me also add to that, though, that I think adults also expect that society is going to step up, and then it doesn't happen. It shouldn't be that the situation is so difficult, and we expect the most. We expect what should happen, and we have all got to learn how to step up. And not see through a colorblind lens, and attempt to help children to be able to honor each other and connect with each other and have the challenging conversations and do the challenging work.
Sorry, I was muted. Sarah, next.
I wanted to go back a little bit to the something Helen said a while ago about race, and that she was confused by it. And I want to really stress the fact that I think all of you know, race is a social construct. There really isn't a race issue. And so when you feel that way, that's quite natural, because it's really unnatural to do what we are doing and have been trained to do. I think on our base biology, we don't actually feel there's different. We fall in love, we live, we have friends, and yet society has put these social constructs on our lives that are so divisive and insidious, right? So we all talk about race, and race, you cannot be colorblind, because in our world, it is ruled by race, right? We've controlled and made all these kinds of very dangerous structures that hurt people, but it's not real. And so I think as educators, when you come at it from the place of it being something that is applied to our societies, you can choose to break it down. You know, we got to break down those structures to get back to the fact that race is a social construct and that it can be rebuilt in a different fashion. And I applaud all of you for doing that, because when you get it, when you turn the light on it, and you realize it's just artificial, then we can start really taking it down. And then someday in the future, maybe we won't have to see race and see the impact of it, because that we will no longer be having to have people experience that on a regular basis. Thanks.
Yeah, Sarah, I just want to say that I don't want to dismiss race as not being an issue. The social construct has created the issue.
Correct.
Yes.
That's exactly what I mean. The social construct has built this around us, and we got to break it.
Thanks, Sam. Helen, I'm going to let you go next, and then Sonia. And I know we have a couple more hands up. I don't know how much, let's see, we have about 10 to 12 minutes left, Cindy, just to give you the heads up. You'll let us know how much longer.
I didn't raise my hand.
Oh, okay, then it was just up from before. So thank you. I'm going to go to Sonia if your hand is up officially, or if it was up from before.
Okay, thank you. Well, I want to actually start by just thanking everybody for their willingness to share their stories and how much it has touched many of us. And Cindy, for the fact that you've created this forum that is allowing for that. I had my own experience is one where I grew up in East Los Angeles. I had a very diverse group that I experienced from the time I was small, mostly Mexican American, and a large Black community, and then a smaller percentage of Asian. So that was my experience all my life. I had a similar decision-making as a parent, Arlette, that my husband and I decided to take our family and raise our children in a natural setting. So we went to Cambria, California, Central Coast. I took my anti-bias awareness curriculum with me there. And then I had a classroom of all white children. And I enjoyed Louise Derman Sparks' book, What Do You Do When All the Children Are White? And I made a commitment that there's more reason to have an anti-bias diversity awareness experience in the classroom. And I had a Head Start experience, but then I quickly set up a Montessori school there. A foundation statement in that Montessori school was anti-bias awareness as a foundation. If you're truly going to create a free child that can be the person of tomorrow's peaceful decisions and world peace. So with that foundation statement, people didn't necessarily come to me because of that founding statement. They came to me because it was a private Montessori school. I had the same experience where they happened to be all white, even in this, because it was a small town that was not very diverse. But I had to make a commitment that that was not going to be healthy for the children there. Diversity at that time was just my children who happened to be Asian, Mexican, my combinations of things. The commitment was then to have scholarship raising funds and fundraising efforts so that we could then create a diverse group. That group had to be supported. So like Cindy's doing right now, there was this effort to have that foundation statement repeated. And the weaving through of monthly parent meetings that became also these times for interweaving anti-bias awareness issues and grow the ability to talk about it. And finally, in my master's program in anti-bias awareness, I used my center's learning through that journey as a case study in order to make a point. And the point being, the conversation needs to be supported. Parents did not have any skill. They didn't know how to listen. They didn't know that these issues were real to many people's lives. And the real way to break through, because we all, if you believe in humanity and that we can grow this empathetic heart, we have to start where they are. And where they are is in the dark. And someone mentioned the confusion of not knowing how to deal with things. Well, Cindy, this format of starting with people's stories, where no one can deny someone's lived experience, makes racism very evident, very real to people who might have denied that racism existed. And by growing a rapport within your families to support this growth in our children, how to become social beings that aren't going to be dominators. You include different, we included different frameworks in each of our series of parent meetings so that then they had terms, new perspectives to then talk about some of the experiences that they bring up in their storytelling. So when somebody did talk about a story and it related to color blindness, we could go back and label it as such, so that by the end of, maybe not the first year, but by the second year and the third year, with repeated times of being able to have conversations, they were much more articulate about naming it when they came across a misperception about color blindness, about what, that racism, understanding that racism is a social construct and it has no basis in biology. People don't have that awareness in the beginning. So you you grow that awareness by giving them different lenses to then perceive things in a different way and grow their ability to be themselves, willing to see things in somebody else's shoes. Mm-hmm. So, I appreciate the fact that you're offering this as a great model for that. I'm hoping that more early childhood and especially Montessori programs will see that the children need that. So we can't not provide it. So it was my attempt to say, here's one way that it can be provided, and here's the case where you could at least start there, and then let's learn from each other. So I'm enjoying the conversations now. So thank you.
Thank you, Sonia.
Lisa, do you have your hand up, or was that up from before? You do, go ahead and unmute then. Thank you.
So a couple things just really quick. One is we're at the beach. This is the beach cottage. It's about the size of a postage stamp and looks like a shed on Google Maps. But anyway, my parents and sister stay across the way. My brother stays across the yard. And we were talking last night, and I don't know how we got to reminiscing about high school times with our kids, but we were. And we were talking about our experiences. We moved from Baltimore County about 45 minutes northwest when I was in my first year of college. I just finished, and my brother and sister were in high school. So my brother had gone, not actually to the high school I did because it was redistricted, but to another primarily Black high school. And when they transferred, they shut him out of all of his sports because they did not want him on their team. So he had played football and couldn't play football. He had played basketball, couldn't play basketball. He had played baseball forever and couldn't play baseball, and he's an athlete. And he picked up tennis, but he got shut out. My sister took a Black date to the prom, and she was telling us last night, and I don't remember the story, her best friend's father pinned her in a room just because he filled the doorway and spewed racial slurs at her and slurs about her date, her friends. And my parents hadn't heard that story, so they were appalled. But I was appalled back then. Oh, and I nannied in college, and I took this little boy who was 4.5 to preschool, picked him up half day from preschool, took him to McDonald's where we got a Snoopy farmer toy, and he sang Old MacDonald Had a Farm and included a slave. And I almost had a heart attack. Wow. And it was bizarre to me then that was our reality and that was our new experience. And it is stunning to me now that it is, even though I'm white, it's stunning to me now that this is still going on. I mean, it's just stunning.
Yeah. Sick.
It is. It's so inhumane and inhuman, and it's just heartbreaking and heart-wrenching at this point. Well, it has been, but that it still is. I just don't, it boggles my mind.
Yeah.
That was all.
Lisa. I think Michael had a quick comment, and then we're going to get back to Cindy to close this up.
Yeah, I just wanted to share something a little bit about something on the back of what Arlette was sharing. And I want to be honest here because I enjoy being in the group, and so I just want to spew something here. Is that I come from my parents are from the West Indies. They're from Antigua, Barbuda. My wife is from Guyana, South America. Together we have a rich history and family and lineage, and we're all over the place. And the other, we've done 23andMe, and we see where we come from and the different aspects of our ethnicity. And I love who I am. I do love who I am. But when we moved here in the situation she described, and we had the choice to make. Please, I want to be honest here because I think it's part of the problem. I did not want my children to go to a Black school. I don't know if I've ever told her that before, but I was not having it. I didn't want them to be in that black school. I didn't want them to identify with a portion of the black experience, not everything, because I do enjoy and love the fact that I'm glad I'm black, but I didn't want them to go to that school. I didn't want my son to grow up. In my mind, this was all inflated, by the way. This wasn't just a matter of going to a black school. I mean, I'm petrified, right, that my son, the first time he'll be introduced to a belt when he's 25, right? So I'm thinking that, right? I don't want his pants sagging, you know, dreads in his hair. And, you know, if I had to choose, I would rather him sound like Foghorn Leghorn than him come home with Ebonics or saying you be, she be, all right? So I'm just telling you the truth. This was in my experience against aspects of my own culture. Please don't get me wrong. There's a reason why I'm sharing this with you. I thought about, I taught I coached soccer for 11 years, and there was a white family, a young man in my school, in my soccer group. His home got zoned to the black school, and he had to go to the black school, and I thought, poor fellow, you know, that was in my heart against members and aspects of my own community, my own culture, my own ethnicity. That's how I felt. So what I'm trying to say is that there's a duality in all of us, you know? There's a duality. Like, who am I going to be when the camera goes off here? Okay, right? So nobody's running the stop sign when the police are looking, but when the police stop looking, we do a California roll, or we just blow it. And I'm not here to lecture anyone. I'm just saying that even in my own community, in my own heart, I am institutionalized, so to speak. Now, I'm not saying that I feel that way anymore, but I did back then when I first moved here. I was scared. I was scared how he might grow up. I would rather him, you know, for every aspect of the dregs of what is, you know, perceived as the dregs of my ethnicity, there's an equal one on the other side. He could be a skater boy, you know, long hair and beer drinking, whatever the situation is. I'm just saying, whatever the stereotypes are. And I would have rather him been that individual than the stereotypes or the realities regarding our ethnicity. So my point is that it goes so deep. The normalization, the white normalcy goes so deep that it would push someone like myself to not even want my son to adopt many aspects of his own ethnicity, some that aren't even bad. The pants sagging, it's a fashion statement. Fine, you won't get a job at, you know, a law firm looking that way, but he's growing up. And, you know, my friend next door, his son had been locked up 3 times. And he would say, he's growing up. He's growing up. I mean, me and my wife were like, we could not believe that he was able to get off 3 times for the things that he did. And it was just normal. I mean, he was just growing up. If my son, when he was 10, he did a report on Schindler's List. It was impressive, actually, but he did a report on Schindler's List. Nothing wrong with it, but that's what I made him do. If Elton John and Coldplay were not playing in my car when we were driving down south to Florida, something was wrong. But I've examined myself, and I've had a lot of self-examination as I've come up, and I've come to see that there's nothing wrong with various aspects with these aspects. You know, the way we look at things, because of the state of the nation, because of the, you know, being a white male is the high bar. Let me put it like that. That's what we strive for, to be a white male. You know, the status of a white male, to be able to go into a law firm and get a job with your high school diploma. You know, I'm exaggerating a fact. You know, that's the bar, and it shouldn't be that way. You know, my son should be comfortable growing up with aspects of his own ethnicity. Maybe his pants will sag for a little while. Maybe he'll listen to a whole lot of rap music. but you know, I didn't want it. I didn't want it for him because I didn't see that he could make a future from having these aspects of his own culture and make it. And maybe I'm just a shallow individual, but I'm just giving you a fact of how some people in my community may, you know, think or may have to go through. Anyway, I'm done. I just wanted to share that.
Michael, what you're describing is how racism has turned around and hit Black people in a completely different way. So that, and when you describe the white male as being the one that people ascribe to, it is actually the white male from a long time ago who came to America and created what America was by dominating and destroying and killing people, taking their language, and that stereotype has been considered good and powerful, and one that frames itself around success, so that people over the years have wanted to be that, and society has wanted to be that, to the detriment of so many people, particularly people of color. And that many Black people have then so wanted to completely remove their family from anything that in any way connects with the stereotypes, the things that people have said, any aspect of the culture that has to do with being African or being a person of color from anywhere, out of fear that it will be looked at as being something that is wrong. In a society in which, at the exact same time, the dichotomy is that at the exact same time, you can have someone who is white become a rapper and make money and be considered incredible in the eyes of Hollywood. And if you see a young Black man on the street who's singing and talking rap, people are going to assume that they probably don't have a job, aren't going to school, and won't achieve anything. And that's unfortunate, and a piece that we have to be able to change. Have to be able to change. And it sounds like your children forced you to do some work so that you could allow them to be who they are, and that they're trying to sort that piece out for themselves right now. We have to continue this next week, Kathy.
Indeed, we do.
Yeah, because we've gotten to some wonderful places.
Yeah.
I want to thank everybody who is on right now for being on. I also want to say to you, please invite people to be on.
Mm-hmm.
Tell people about this forum because we're doing a radical thing, and we need to be able to keep this going so that we make those differences and those changes as they need to be. I want to close with a poem and an affirmation. The poem is called "I Am the Black Child." And it says, "I am the Black child. I am special. Ridicule cannot sway me. I am strong. Obstacles cannot stop me. I hold my head high, proudly proclaiming my uniqueness. I hold my pace, continuing forward through adversity. I am proud of my culture and my heritage. I am confident that I can achieve my every goal. I am becoming all that I can be. I am the Black child, and I am the child of God." And I want to say to you that you should be able to hold the affirmation, yes, you are the Black child, you are special, and you should not be in an environment that ridicules you. And I will do the work to help you to be in that environment. Yes, you are strong. Obstacles cannot stop you, but I will help to keep opportunities from becoming obstacles and allow you to be able to have the opportunities that you need. Yes, you hold your head up high, proudly proclaiming your uniqueness, and I will honor that uniqueness. And I will help other people to see your wonderful uniqueness and experiences of race and culture. I am proud of my culture and my heritage. Yes, you are proud of your culture and your heritage, and I will show my pride in your heritage, and I will hold it up for others. Yes, you are confident that you can achieve every goal, and I will hold you to that. I will hold you to your expectations, and I will expect the world of you, and I will support you. Yes, you are becoming all that you can be, and I will ensure that there is access and opportunity as equal and as equitable as that is possible. Yes, you are the Black child, you are the child of God, you are the child of the universe.
Cindy, can we get that poem?
Yes, the first part of it is, the second part I wrote. The first part is by Michael Wynn, W-Y-N-N, spelled M-Y-C-H-A-L, W-Y-N-N. And yes,
I want your part too.
Okay, I can send that.
So yeah, Cindy, if you send it, we can post it for the next meeting, because there are a lot of people requesting it and think it would be really great to not only for ourselves, but also to share with others. So thank you for that.
And it certainly leads into next week's, which is the classroom.
Yes, yes. Next week, we're going to be talking about racism and the classroom. And so,
Well,
invite people, definitely.
We will be here, and thank you everyone for being here today, for sharing your stories, and for just holding the space for all of us to grow and learn together.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much, Cindy.
Mm-hmm.
See everybody next week.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Hi, Ann.
Cindy, you are just blowing it out of the park. You are so great.